Also holding a briefing today, DA leader and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen. He gave an upbeat report back on the first 100 days of the Government of National Unity. Juniour Khumalo is with me now. He was there, attended that briefing. Juniour, very good afternoon to you. Let's start where the leader of the MK party in Parliament, a subject that he spoke about in that particular soundbite, the NPA's decision not to prosecute President Ramaphosa over Phala. This, of course, to John Steenhuisen came as a question from journalists.
Indeed, Bravo. The DA leader was also asked about the similar question. We know that the DA had indicated that they will not be taking part in the DA's bid to basically reinstate those impeachment proceedings when it comes to Parliament and the Phala matter. A lot of people had accused the DA that they are now being lenient with President Cyril Ramaphosa since they joined the GNU. But surprisingly, when asked about this, he did indicate that they wanted more action to be done around this. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
On the NPA, as a party, it respects the rule of law and the processes. We obviously have noted the comments of the decision of the Deputy Public Prosecutor, and our discussions with the party is that the NPA will be summoned by our members on the Justice Portfolio Committee in Parliament to come and explain their decision. I think that there does need to be greater explanation of the decision. I think that when a decision like this is made and it has obvious implications that reach right the way to the very top of government, that there does need to be greater information that is provided. And I believe that the Justice Portfolio Committee in Parliament should be the place where the NPA come and share with those who are exercised with conducting oversight of them, are able to understand the decisions there. Once that information is given, it will obviously determine how you proceed going forward.
Of course, I mean, that particular soundbite was in response to a question from journalists. Now, the whole idea of the briefing was to look at the 100 years of the Government of National Unity, and he had some positive things to say about it.
Indeed, the whole idea behind it was just to give a feedback on how the DA ministers, there are about 6 ministers and 6 deputy ministers from the Democratic Alliance, how they've performed so far within this government of national unity, basically. But one thing about that government of national unity, we know a lot about some ministers such as Yosiviwe Kwahube's, what they've been doing, ministers such as Solly Malatsi, as well as Dean McPherson. But when it comes to the DA leader himself, John Steenhuisen, his term in office has been shrouded in a lot of controversies when it comes to the appointments that he has made in that government of national unity. He said that it was not cadre deployment, what he had tried to do in his office, but more or less trying to bring in people that would advise him.
He came very ready with that definition, which he said was an international definition of cadre deployment.
That's what he had to say about his term, because it seems like his was shrouded in that controversy. But he said that in overall, the DA had performed well, and looking up to the upcoming elections, I think that's why the DA called this briefing, just to show South Africans that we are not just backbenchers within this government of national unity. But they did take a very tough stance, saying there were still non-negotiables within this government of national unity. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about that.
In addition to these critical priorities, there are also 4 specific things the DA will not agree to under any circumstances. Firstly, further bailouts for state-owned enterprises. South Africa has spent over 350 billion rand in bailouts for SOEs over the past 10 years. And this is one of the reasons why we are in such a very difficult fiscal crisis. Money that should be available and readily available for teachers and nurses is now gone. It has to stop somewhere, and we intend that it stops now. The implementation of Clause 4 and 5 of Bella, which opens the door to depriving children of mother tongue education in single medium schools. Thirdly, the implementation of the National Health Insurance Scheme in its current form, which will bankrupt South Africa without improving healthcare or health outcomes, and without advancing us a single step closer to achieving the goal of universal access to basic healthcare for all South Africans, regardless of their income status.
A lot of tough talk, 4 big non-negotiables, but no indication whatsoever that they would be prepared to leave the GNU or under any conditions at this stage. If anything, the sense I got was that they're staying.
Indeed.
Come what may.
The sense that we also got as reporters that were there is that come whatever might come from the ANC, especially the implementation of those 2 clauses in the Bella Act, as well as the implementation of the NHI, the DA is not promising that they will pull out of this arrangement. Instead, the leader, John Steenhuisen, said that they would go back to the DA's Federal Council and they will take instruction from the Federal Executive of the Democratic Alliance. Even when it comes to Tshwane, the DA was talking very tough before the election of the new mayor, saying that if Celia Brink is not reinstated as mayor, they might re-look the GNU arrangement. But today, when the leader was speaking, he said that the arrangement at a GNU level was not expected to trickle down to local government level. That's not the agreement that they have with the ANC, according to Steenhuisen.
Yet, at the same time, he was also saying that they were talking about implementation because a lot of implementation has to happen at local level.
Indeed.
But of course, he did say that there has been a meeting, at least one meeting, already to look into those issues. But what I also found curious was him insisting or maintaining that negotiations between the GNU partners happened behind closed doors. They even have, for lack of a better word, I can't remember how he put it exactly, sort of deadlock-breaking mechanisms. And yet, many people have accused their federal chairperson, Helen Zille, of actually negotiating in the media or in public.
Indeed, he spoke a lot about this mechanism, the committee that is going to be put in place to try and resolve any deadlocks between the 10 parties that are signatories to this GNU. He indicated that the President Cyril Ramaphosa, had actually met with all the leaders of these parties to try and speak about when this mechanism is going to start working, basically. And he said that it is imperative that some of these discussions don't play out in the public space because it makes South Africans very anxious about this arrangement that the parties involved in the GNU have. So we heard an indication that it might be meeting, this deadlock resolution mechanism committee, as they call it, might be meeting in the next 3 weeks. So this is where the Bella Bill, the implementation of the Bella clauses, those 2 clauses, will be finalized and discussed there before the president makes an announcement.
Foreign policy came up. You know, I mean, obviously we know the issues there where the DA stands versus the ANC with regard to the issue of Israel-Palestine, for example. You know, China versus Taiwan were some of the examples that were brought up by the journalists who were there. And his answers were quite interesting, weren't they?
They were very interesting because he said that the current government, as it stands, has a certain policy position that it is working under. And this is an ANC policy position. And he said that as a minister who basically took an oath to serve South Africans, he is going to basically work around those policy positions of the ANC. The
country comes first.
For now, the country comes first, the people come first. So that's what he's going to do. But these parties are still going to engage and try and see if they can shift some of those ANC policy positions when it comes to foreign policy in South Africa.
He will go to China, and of course he will address any and every forum.
He would even go to Russia.
The government's lead on the China-Taiwan issue. Interesting comments, real indeed, that he made. Juniour Khumalo, who was of course at that briefing that was addressed by the leader of the Democratic Alliance, who's also a Minister of Agriculture, and that's John Steenhuisen.